All right, get ready, because today we are taking a deep dive into the cardiovascular system.
Ooh, sounds intense.
It is, and we've got a fantastic guide to help us navigate this complex world.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
A physiology handout, prepared by Dr. Rasha Eldeeb, Associate Professor of Medical Physiology.
All right, she definitely knows her stuff.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
we all know the heart beats, right? But have you ever stopped to think how it does that? How it keeps that rhythm going 24/7 for our entire lives?
Yeah, that is pretty mind-blowing when you think about it.
It really is. It's like this incredible feat of engineering happening inside of us all the time.
It's like our own personal engine, always running.
Exactly. And that's what we're going to unpack today.
I'm excited.
Me too. And just to give you a little taste of what's to come, we're going to talk about things like why red blood cells have to squeeze through capillaries.
That's a good one.
Right. And then there's this thing called the all or nothing principle.
Intriguing.
Oh, it is. And of course, we can't forget about the heart's electrical system.
Oh, yeah, the wiring that keeps it all running.
Exactly. So basically, our mission today is to understand how this system, the engine of our bodies, actually works.
I'm ready to dive in.
Perfect.
Oh.
Let's start with a quick overview.
Okay, sounds good.
So the cardiovascular system is made up of the heart, which acts as the pressure pump.
Right, the powerhouse.
And then there are the blood vessels, which are basically the transportation network.
The roads and highways.
Yep. You've got your arteries, arterioles, capillaries, venules, and veins.
Quite the network.
It is. And all of these components contain blood, which is constantly circulating throughout our lives.
So it's like a closed loop, never stopping.
Exactly. Now, let's zoom in on the heart a bit.
Okay, the heart of the matter.
I see what you did there.
Yeah.
So the heart is divided into two halves, right?
Yep, the right side and the left side.
And each side has an atrium and a ventricle.
Like two little pumps working side by side.
Exactly. And to make sure blood flows in the right direction, there are these things called atrioventricular valves, or AV valves for short.
So they're like one-way doors.
Yep. They prevent blood from flowing backward from the ventricle back up into the atrium.
Makes sense. So it's all about efficiency.
Definitely. Now, have you ever noticed how the different chambers of the heart have different thicknesses?
Oh, yeah. Some are really beefy while others are kind of thin.
Right. And that's all related to how hard each chamber has to work to pump blood.
So the thicker the muscle, the stronger the pump.
You got it. The atria, those the thin-walled chambers, they just need to pump blood into the ventricles.
So they're like the first stage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then the ventricles, they have to pump blood out to the rest of the body, so they need more muscle power.
Which makes sense, right? Pushing blood through the whole body versus just the next chamber over.
Exactly. And the left ventricle, that's the real workhorse.
Oh, yeah. Why is that?
Well, it has to pump blood through the entire systemic circulation, which means it's facing much higher resistance.
Ah, so it needs to be extra strong to overcome that.
Precisely. It's like the heavy lifter of the heart.
It's
It is. Now, speaking of blood flow, we can't forget about the heart valves.
the gatekeepers.
Exactly. There are four main valves. The tricuspid valve, which is on the right side,
Okay,
the mitral valve, or bicuspid valve, which is on the left,
got it.
and then there are the semilunar valves, one in the aorta and one in the pulmonary artery.
So they're all strategically placed.
They are. And their job is to prevent the mixing of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood.
Keeping things separate.
Exactly. Ensuring that one-way flow so the circulatory system can work efficiently.
Like a well-oiled machine.
Exactly. Now, let's follow the blood as it leaves the heart.
All right, let's go on a journey.
So oxygenated blood is pumped out of the left ventricle through the aorta.
The main artery. Yeah.
You got it. And from there, it branches out into all these systemic arteries, supplying blood to the organs and limbs.
So it's like a delivery system.
It is. Every artery has its own specific territory or vascular bed that it supplies.
And each of those areas is drained by a corresponding vein.
That's right. It's like a beautifully organized network.
It's amazing.
Now, let's talk about arteries in a bit more detail.
Okay, the superhighways.
Exactly. They're large in diameter, have thick walls, and contain both smooth muscle and elastic tissue.
So they're built to handle that high pressure.
They are, and that elasticity is super important.
Yeah, why is that?
Well, it allows the arteries to stretch when the heart contracts, during systole when it's pumping out blood.
Ah, so they expand to accommodate the surge.
Exactly. And then during diastole, when the heart is relaxing and filling with blood, the arteries recoil.
So they're helping to maintain that pressure and keep the blood flowing smoothly?
Precisely. It's like a built-in shock absorber for the circulatory system.
Pretty cool.
It is. But as we move further away from the heart, those arteries start to branch out into smaller vessels, called arterioles.
So it's like going from highways to smaller roads.
Exactly. And the arterioles are where things get really interesting.
Oh, yeah. Why is that?
Well, they have these thick, smooth muscle walls, even thicker than arteries,
Really? Why would they need more muscle?
because they act as the main control points for blood flow resistance.
So they're like the traffic controllers.
Precisely. They can change their diameter to adjust how much resistance blood faces as it flows through.
So that's why they're called resistance vessels.
Exactly. And this ability to constrict or dilate is what allows them to direct blood flow to different parts of the body based on need.
Wow. So they're like tiny little valves all over the body.
That's a great way to think about it. And their activity is regulated by all sorts of signals, hormones, nerves, even local changes in oxygen levels.
So it's a very responsive system.
It is. It's constantly adapting to make sure each part of the body gets the blood supply it needs at any given moment.
Amazing. Now, where does all this blood end up?
Well, the arterioles eventually lead to the capillaries.
The tiniest blood vessels.
Right. And Dr. Eldeeb's handout describes them as the exchange vessels.
Exchange vessels.
Yeah, because this is where the actual exchange of oxygen, nutrients, and waste products takes place between the blood and the body's tissues.
So it's like the delivery trucks finally reaching their destinations.
That's a perfect analogy. Now, these capillaries are incredibly tiny.
We're talking microscopic.
Exactly. Their walls are only 1 cell thick, and they have these tiny pores that allow substances to pass through.
So it's all about diffusion.
It is. Now, remember how red blood cells are pretty big?
Yeah.
Well, those capillaries are so small that the red blood cells actually have to squeeze through.
Really? How do they even fit?
Red blood cells are surprisingly flexible. They can deform their shape to navigate these narrow passages.
Wow, that's amazing.
It is. And this squeezing action actually helps slow down the blood flow.
Oh, why is that important?
It gives more time for those essential exchanges to happen between the blood and the tissues.
Ah, so it's all about maximizing efficiency.
Exactly. Now, once the deliveries are made and the waste is picked up, the blood needs to get back to the heart, right?
Makes sense, the return trip.
And that's where venules and veins come in.
Okay, so they're like the return routes.
Precisely. Venules collect the blood from the capillaries and merge into larger veins.
So it's like going from those tiny back roads back to the highways.
Exactly. And veins are a bit different from arteries.
How so?
Their walls are thinner and they have less muscle.
So they're not as strong.
Not as strong in terms of pumping, but they're still capable of contracting.
Interesting.
And here's a cool fact. Veins actually hold over 60% of your blood volume.
Wow, so they're like the reservoirs of the circulatory system.
They are, which is why they're sometimes called capacity vessels.
I'm learning so much.
Me too. Now, veins also have a trick up their sleeve.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
They have these one-way valves, especially in the lower limbs, to prevent backflow.
Ah, that makes sense.
Right, because blood has to work against gravity to get back up to the heart.
Especially from the legs.
Exactly. So those valves act like little checkpoints, making sure the blood keeps flowing in the right direction.
Very clever.
Now, before we move on to the heart's electrical system, there's one more important component of the circulatory system we need to mention.
What's that?
The lymphatic system.
The what?
Yeah, it's often overlooked, but it plays a crucial role.
Okay, what does it do?
Well, remember how we talked about capillaries having those tiny pores for exchange?
Yeah.
Well, some of the fluid that leaks out of those capillaries doesn't go directly back into the veins.
Oh. Where does it go?
It gets picked up by the lymphatic system.
Interesting. So it's like a drainage system.
Exactly. It collects that excess fluid and eventually returns it to the bloodstream.
So it's preventing our tissues from getting waterlogged.
Precisely. But the lymphatic system is more than just a drainage system.
It is.
It's also a key player in immune function.
Oh, wow.
The lymphatic system filters out harmful substances and transports immune cells throughout the body.
So it's like a security patrol for the circulatory system.
That's a great way to put it. It's constantly working to keep us healthy.
Wow, I never realized how important the lymphatic system is.
It's a true multitasker. So we've covered the heart, the network of blood vessels, and even the lymphatic system.
Quite a journey.
It is. And believe it or not, we've only just scratched the surface.
There's more.
Oh, yeah. We've explored the macroscopic level, but to truly understand how this intricate machine works, we need to zoom in even further.
Oh, getting microscopic.
Exactly. We need to delve into the fascinating world of cardiac muscle and the electrical system that keeps the heart beating.
Okay, I'm ready to get down to the nitty-gritty.
Perfect. Let's dive deeper into the heart of the matter,
So we talked about the heart as this powerful pump and all those roads and highways of the circulatory system.
right? All those vessels.
But to really understand how this incredible machine works,
Yeah.
we need to zoom in even further, down to the cellular level.
Like microscopic level.
Up to-
Getting into the heart of the matter.
That's right. We're talking about cardiac muscle.
All right, so cardiac muscle, this is what the heart is made of, right?
Exactly. It's what makes the heart contract and pump blood.
And Dr. Eldeeb's handout says that cardiac muscle is kind of unique.
Oh, yeah, it is.
It's like a hybrid between skeletal muscle and smooth muscle.
You got it.
Okay, so I know skeletal muscle, that's what we use to move our bodies.
Right, like when you lift weights or go for a run.
And what's smooth muscle again?
That's the muscle found in our internal organs, like the digestive system.
Okay, so how is cardiac muscle a hybrid?
Well, like skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle is striated.
Striated.
It means it has this organized structure that allows for strong contractions.
Ah, so it's built for power, like skeletal muscle.
Exactly.
But we don't have to consciously think about making our hearts beat, brain.
Thankfully, no.
So it's not like I have to tell my heart, okay, time to contract every second.
No, thankfully not. And that's where the similarity to smooth muscle comes in.
Okay.
Cardiac muscle is involuntary, meaning it contracts automatically.
Ah, so it's got that automatic function like smooth muscle.
Precisely. Imagine having to consciously control your heartbeat.
Yeah, that would be exhausting.
And probably pretty stressful.
Totally. But how does cardiac muscle contract in such a coordinated way?
Right. It's not just random squeezing.
It's this perfect rhythm every time.
Well, that's because cardiac muscle cells are connected in a very special way.
How so?
They have these structures called intercalated discs.
Intercalated discs.
Yeah, think of them like little bridges between the cells.
Okay.
And these bridges allow electrical signals to pass really quickly from one cell to the next.
So it's like a chain reaction.
Yeah.
One cell gets the signal and it just spreads throughout the whole heart.
Exactly. It's this interconnectedness that allows the heart to function as a functional syncytium.
Syncytium, that's a mouthful.
It basically means that the whole heart muscle works together as one unit.
Ah, so it's like a team of rowers all pulling their oars in perfect sync.
Perfect analogy.
Now, the handout also mentions something called the all-or-nothing principle.
Oh, yeah, that's a key concept.
But what does it mean in the context of the heart?
It means that under normal conditions, the heart either contracts fully or not at all.
No half measures?
Nope. Because of that syncytium, that interconnectedness, the entire heart muscle responds as one.
So it's always giving it 100%.
You got it. Which is why it's so important to maintain a healthy heart rhythm.
Okay, so now I'm really curious about this electrical system that keeps everything running so smoothly.
Right, the heart's internal wiring?
It's like the heart has its own electrical grid.
It does, and it's pretty fascinating.
So walk me through it. Where does the electrical signal that triggers the heartbeat start?
It all begins in a small group of specialized cells called the sinoatrial node, or SAN for short.
The SANs?
Yep. Often called the heart's natural pacemaker.
So that's where the beat originates.
Exactly. And where is this pacemaker located?
It's actually nestled in the wall of the right atrium.
Oh, wow. So it's tucked away up there.
It is. And these cells in the SAN have this incredible ability to generate electrical impulses all on their own.
Like they have their own little power source. It is. And they do this rhythmically, setting the pace for your heartbeat.
It's like the heart has its own built-in metronome.
Perfect way to put it. But how does that signal get from the SAN to the rest of the heart?
Yeah, it's not like there are wires running through it, right?
Well, not actual wires, but remember those intercalated discs we talked about?
The little bridges between the cells?
Yep, they act like the wiring, allowing the electrical signal to spread rapidly through the atria.
Oh, okay, so it's all connected.
It is. And when the atria receive the signal, they contract, pushing blood into the ventricles.
So that's the first beat.
You got it.
Now what?
The signal then reaches a critical relay station called the atrioventricular node, or AV node.
The AV node. Another group of specialized cells.
You got it.
Okay, but why is there a delay there? Why doesn't the signal just zip straight through to the ventricles?
That delay is crucial. The AV node momentarily slows down the electrical impulse before sending it to the ventricles.
Why the pause?
It allows the atria to finish contracting and fully squeeze out their blood into the ventricles before the ventricles start contracting.
So it's all about timing.
Exactly, making sure everything happens in the right sequence.
Okay, so the AV node pauses the signal. Then what?
Then the signal travels down a pathway called the AV bundle, also known as the bundle of His.
The bundle of His, huh?
It splits into two branches, one for each ventricle.
Like splitting the signal.
Exactly.
Okay, so now the signal is headed to the ventricles, but how does it spread throughout those large chambers to make sure they contract in unison?
That's where the Purkinje fibers come in.
Purkinje fibers, another new term.
They're these specialized fibers that branch out from the AV bundle and spread throughout the ventricular walls.
Okay.
They ensure that the electrical signal is delivered super quickly and efficiently, causing a synchronized contraction of the ventricles.
Wow, it's like a perfectly orchestrated electrical symphony.
It really is. And to think, this whole process from the initial spark in the sand to the final contraction of the ventricles happens in less than a second.
Less than a second. That's insane.
And it happens over and over again without us even having to think about it.
That is incredible.
It really is a testament to the incredible efficiency and complexity of the cardiovascular system.
Wow, this is mind-blowing.
It is, but what's even more remarkable is how the system can adapt to our changing needs.
Really? Our hearts can adapt.
Absolutely.
It's amazing how our hearts can just adapt like that.
It is, but just like any complex system, things can go wrong sometimes.
Right, there can be glitches.
Exactly.
And when it comes to the heart, those glitches can be serious.
They can be.
So you mentioned arrhythmias earlier.
Yeah.
Those are basically disruptions to the heart's rhythm.
That's right.
And remember how we talked about that all or nothing principle?
Yeah, where the heart either contracts fully or not at all.
Right. So what happens if those electrical signals get messed up?
Well, if the signals aren't coordinated, the heart can't pump blood effectively.
That makes sense.
And that can lead to all sorts of problems.
Oh, no. Like what?
Fatigue, shortness of breath, dizziness,
Oh,
and in severe cases, even heart failure or sudden cardiac arrest.
that's scary. So what causes these arrhythmias in the first place? Is it always a sign of something serious?
It can be a lot of different things.
Okay.
Sometimes it's something as simple as stress, dehydration, or too much caffeine.
Oh, so like those heart palpitations I get after too much coffee?
It could be.
That's reassuring. Well, kind of.
Palpitations are often a sign of a harmless, temporary arrhythmia.
Okay, that's good to know.
But other times, arrhythmias can be caused by underlying heart disease, damage from a heart attack, or even genetic factors.
But it really varies. So is there
Yes.
anything we can do to keep our hearts healthy and prevent these problems?
Absolutely. The good news is there's a lot we can do.
Oh, good. I'm all ears.
Well, the classics. A balanced diet, regular exercise, managing stress, and avoiding smoking, those all play a huge role.
So those healthy habits we always hear about, they actually make a difference.
They do.
It's not just something doctors say to scare us.
Not at all. Those recommendations are backed by solid science.
Okay, good to know.
And of course, regular checkups with your doctor are important, especially if you have a family history of heart disease or if you notice any unusual symptoms.
So being proactive is key.
It is. It's all about taking care of ourselves.
Which brings me back to something you said earlier about the heart constantly adapting to our needs.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
Can you elaborate on that a bit? Give me an example.
Sure. Think about what happens when you exercise.
Okay.
Your heart rate and blood pressure increase to meet the demands of your muscles.
Right, my heart's beating faster. I can feel it.
And the arterioles in your muscles, remember those tiny blood vessels?
Yeah, the traffic controllers.
Well, they dilate to deliver more oxygen-rich blood to your muscles.
So they're opening up to let more blood through.
Exactly. While the arterioles in less active areas might constrict, kind of redirecting the flow where it's needed most.
Wow, so it's like the circulatory system is constantly adjusting its strategy based on what the body needs.
Precisely. It's this dynamic, responsive network that's constantly working to keep us alive and functioning.
This deep dive has been incredible. I feel like I have a whole new appreciation for my heart.
That's great to hear. It really is an amazing organ.
It is. And to think all of this is happening inside us right now without us even having to think about it.
It's a true testament to the power of biology.
It is. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing you want our listeners to take away from this?
Well, I hope they'll remember that every beat of their heart is a miracle of biological engineering.
It really is.
So take care of it, listen to your body, and never hesitate to seek medical advice if something feels off.
Great advice.
And for our listeners who are now fascinated by the cardiovascular system, I encourage them to keep learning and exploring.
Yes, there's so much more to discover.
There is. So until next time, keep those hearts beating strong.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone.